Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time with us, and at this time I'd like to hand over our webinar to Mr. George Keiser, our featured presenter and moderator for our discussion.
Thanks, Kate. What we want to try to do first is to set some context before we move into questions and answers. Some questions that we've already established for the group, and then some questions that we would like to field from you who are on the call with us. First, let's look at some of the historical significance. The whole movement toward evidence-based work started in the late 1980s and into the early 1990s as we imported Canadians and their research that began to answer the question of what does in fact work in working with offenders. People like Paul Gendreau, Don Andrews, Jim Bonta were among the first that we brought into the country with new bodies of knowledge that said there are things that are effective in changing behavior in positive ways with offender populations. During the early to mid-1990s, NIC and the International Community Corrections Association crisscrossed the United States holding what I would call awareness conferences, allowing people to become more aware and better in touch with what this research said and the implications for community corrections. Dr. Ed Latessa, Sharon Kennedy were two people who were instrumental in helping us to convey that message. And by the mid-1990s, we had decided enough with the awareness, now we needed to find out, could we actually put it to work? So evidence-based practice, really evidence-based policy and practice in community corrections needs to start from the policy side first, to look at the what and the why we are attempting to accomplish what we do in managing offenders within the community. And then the practice, the how, needs to align with that what and why. We need to be about applying bodies of knowledge from a wide range of sources, from the business community, from risk management, from human resource management, behavioral sciences, the physical health, as our business moves from one of compliance to one of behavioral management. I'm operating today without the advantage that you have of being able to see the slides on the screen, but I'm presuming that right now you see three interlocking circles that talk about the evidence-based principles, organizational development, and collaboration with stakeholders. This is a model that was identified and designed in the early stages as we began to work with CJI and a consortium of other providers to begin to formulate a model of how do we approach this business. As a practical matter, the next slide shows that it really is about organizational change. It really is about the organization's commitment. And if we're going to design that logo again today, it would probably be the organizational circle that would be the largest. So we start with the commitment of the organization to really take on and to change the way, and in many instances, the what of business that we're doing. And we do that through developing the organization. We use the words of alignment. We begin to look at if what we're attempting to do is change behavior, then do we employ the right people? Are we creating the right competencies? Are we doing our most effective work in terms of sorting out both the risk by nature and degree that the individuals pose, but also to begin to understand what strengths as well as what interventions might mitigate that risk. And finally, we look at the principles that have been driving this business as we have moved into it from the mid-1990s. It really is about that sorting of risk initially, the beginning to look at what puts the person at risk to continue to be involved in the criminal justice system. Rather than imposing on the individual, It really has become our desire to work with those individuals to create motivation within the person to be about behavioral change, and to target the interventions that make the most sense, whether those are formal interventions of behavioral change or other interventions that help reinforce that positive motivation. We can progress with actually practicing the skills that are necessary to lead a legal, law-abiding life, and to increase the positive reinforcement for being successful, not merely trying to catch people doing something wrong, but catching them doing things right. And finally, we want to continue to engage within the community, because for many of these individuals, this work only begins while they're under supervision, but continues on for the rest of their lives. And so we want to engage that community in which the person lives. If we don't measure the effectiveness of what we do, we won't continue to make improvement. So we do that quality assurance, and through the quality assurance, we inform our business practices and continue to move us forward. Kate, I think we have another poll question, and since I'm not going to be able to see either the questions or the results, would you pick up and administer that poll?
Absolutely, George. We've asked folks if their jurisdictions attempt to do organizational development practices in their agencies. 73% of them responded yes. 15% responded that they do not at this time, and another 12% indicated that they would like to be doing these practices.
With that kind of background, let's begin to ask the panelists some questions and start with the organizational piece.